Welcome back to Capitol Tonight. Jennifer Canaday is back with us. She is the Governmental Relations Manager for the Association of Texas Professional Educators. Good to have you back. And we're going to talk about vouchers. It's been a big topic, especially with new leadership here in Austin. So first, the concerns that your group may have with vouchers in general. What's the problem from your perspective about vouchers?
Well, for one thing, I'll tell you, it's deja vu all over again. It's another session. It's the same proposals that keep coming up. The names and faces may change, but we see this generally every legislative session as a proposal to create some sort of privatization mechanism, whether it is a voucher in the traditional sense where you are giving money back to the parents in some format and letting them choose where to take their where to have their children enroll in school with that money, or other means of giving it to businesses and letting them fund scholarships, or giving it directly to the schools. Many different varieties that seem to come up in discussion every legislative session.
And you feel that by having these state dollars move out of the system, that it really puts public schools in jeopardy?
I think it definitely would put a further strain on the public schools, because you have to remember this is a time when we've been in the midst of school finance litigation once again, with our schools funding system being found unconstitutional. That lawsuit is pending on appeal. And I think it's a mistake to talk about funding a parallel school system with private schools when we're not adequately and equitably funding our existing public schools.
Is that ultimately then what's at the heart of it? I know you mentioned maybe new faces but similar ideas, but one face that's changed a little bit is Dan Patrick, our new Lieutenant Governor, who was Chair for Education in the Senate. And so he's always had this idea of trying to encourage school choice, as it's deemed by those in favor of this idea. And he says, you know, we already have school choice right now, so let's not leave anybody out of the mix. Is he right about that, or what do you think of that argument?
Well, I think it's a fallacy to say that anybody's being left out of school choice that we have right now, because that's important to remember, that parents do have those choices. Nobody is forcing anyone to enroll their kids in public schools. There are public schools, there are charter schools, virtual schools, all the way down the spectrum until you get to truly private or parochial schools or even homeschool. So parents already do have those choices. The rub is, of course, on the funding side of it, and whether the government should pay for parents to enroll their children in some of those private options. So I think it's a mistake to say that parents don't have choices right now, when really the debate is about funding. And of course, last session, when Dan Patrick was in the Senate, was chair of the Senate Education Committee, he very publicly announced that this was his top priority, school choice, but the will was not there to pass any type of school choice program into law at that time, and I don't believe that's changed now that he is Lieutenant Governor.
I know it always seems to be, at least right now, the climate might be more apt in the Senate than in the House. But let's talk about some specific bills. What's first and foremost a bill that you're keeping an eye on, and maybe any concerns specifically you have with it?
Well, since bill filing is ongoing,
Sure.
there will be other proposals filed, but probably the one that has received the most recognition so far is the one filed by Senator Donna Campbell. That's one of the higher profile options. But
and this is the one that would move 60% of the funds that would go to the average child from the school system into a private setting.
That's correct. There's also talk about taxpayer savings grants, about creating education savings accounts, many different ideas out there, but they all operate along the same general proposition of taking some of that money that's being used towards the public schools and funneling some of it into private entities. And the real issue there is with accountability and transparency.
Yeah, this is what we always hear from those who are really against the idea of taking those public funds out, is that there is not that accountability in place. Is there any bill that is trying to address accountability that you can see, or would there be a method of accountability that would be acceptable with a voucher system?
I don't think there's a proposal out there that gets us where we would need to be with accountability and transparency. And that's not only accountability to the taxpayers, but also to the parents whose children are enrolled in those schools. The voucher proponents talk about private schools and these options and giving parents more choices. And that sounds great. It's a great talking point, but there is a lot of fine print, as you might imagine, and that's what often isn't shared with parents or even with members of the public when you see polls about public opinion on vouchers.
I know Dan Patrick, Lieutenant Governor Patrick, said that in the case of, I think, the idea that he's proposing, I think this might be the tax incentive area, if I'm not mistaken, that we're only talking about 10,000 students, probably from the lower socioeconomic area out of 5.2 million students. So it's not the end of the world, or this is not that big of a, shouldn't be a big concern. Is it a concern if it's that small amount of children that we're talking about?
It is a concern because I think it's a failed strategy to start with, especially when you're talking about focusing on a small number of students rather than trying to address the public education system as a whole. And this is what we hear so often from voucher proponents and those who are fond of talking about failing schools and students being trapped in failing schools. If you replace that analogy with, say, a burning building, you can see why the strategy doesn't work. If you look at a burning building, what do firefighters do? They gather up all the resources they can find, they strap on their gear, they run inside the burning building, and they try to save everybody, right? But you don't have people standing off to the side, pointing at the burning building, making fun of it, calling it names, calling it a failure, and saying, we're going to take some government money, we're going to create this wonderful shelter for a handful of students who are smart enough, fast enough, or lucky enough to run outside the building, and too bad for everybody else who's trapped inside the burning building. That's not a strategy that would work with firefighting, and I think it's a poor strategy to pursue for public education as well.
As we wrap things up, as we run out of time there, do you see this as the most obvious time that this might actually have a shot at passing any kind of a voucher or tax incentive bill, whatever you might call it, based on the Senate's makeup right now? I mean, is this something that you really feel like this is a wake-up call for those who are opposed to vouchers?
The political compensation might change the equation somewhat in the Senate, but overall, I don't think, I just don't think the will is there to pass vouchers, and I think it's especially true at a time when we're dealing with the court case that's on appeal and trying to figure out how to better fund our schools and fix the broken school finance system as it is.
Real quick, you think that we're inevitably going to be headed for a special session, even if it's into next year, based on the court case?
I do. I think we will certainly be back here with our friends in Austin probably next summer.
Okay. Well, with that in mind, something else for us to cover. Jennifer Canaday with the Association of Texas Professional Educators. Good to see you again.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And we're back with more Capital Tonight after this.